Hello and welcome to Achieving the Vision. I'm Alyssa Silva, your host for this series. This episode will focus on transforming education with AI, from passive consumption to active creation. Today we have a special episode where we'll hear from our guests, Dr. Heidi Baynes, Coordinator of Instructional Services at the Riverside County Office of Education, and Dr. Jeff Oldfield, Executive Director of Innovation and Competitive Advantage at the Riverside County Office of Education. I'll now turn it over to our guests who will lead this discussion from a PowerPoint presentation from the 2025 Propel AI Symposium.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Thanks, Alyssa. Thanks, everyone. It's good to be with you. So this presentation really talks about how AI has become the fastest growing and disruptive technology in education that we'll probably have seen in our lifetimes. And we're going to walk through some implications and think through ways in which it might transform education. And to do that, I kind of wanted to just start with kind of a history of disruptive technology. And typically, when we think about technology, I typically will ask audiences about the types of technology they've used since they woke up. And if you think about, as you're watching this, the kinds of things that you've used that you would consider to be technology, and this isn't a trick question by any means, but just the things that come to your mind. I've asked this question to educators and groups over the last 15 years to several thousand people. And I will get responses, anything from I drove my car to work to I used a coffee pot to I used my cell phone or my iPhone or my iPad or a computer, or I sent an email, or I looked at Twitter, or I used social media. But I can tell you on probably two hands the amount of times that someone has responded to me that the type of technology that they used since they woke up, that they turned a light switch on and that they used electricity, that they thought that electricity was a type of technology that they used. And I suspect that part of the reason why we don't typically think of electricity as technology, and obviously electricity has been an incredibly disruptive and transformative technology in society. But the reason why we typically don't think of electricity as technology is because we can't close our eyes and think of a time when we existed and it did not. It's just always been there. None of us have taken a class on how to use a light switch. We all take it for granted. We use it every day. It's been completely transformative to society. And it is fundamental to how we live and work in our world. But it hasn't always been that case. So typically, we look at something like this. This is an actual sign that is a historical sign. And I ask folks to just think about why this sign might exist. And we get all sorts of responses to this sign. But I will tell you just in briefly that this sign exists because there was a time when electricity was novel and people didn't know how to use it. So there was some pieces to this technology that were confusing, and there was some fear around this technology. So you see that this sign is clearly indicating how to use this new technology called Edison electric light. So it says, do not attempt to light with match, but simply turn the key on the wall by the door. But it also has a really interesting footnote. The use of electricity for lighting is in no way harmful to health, nor does it affect the soundness of sleep. So it's addressing some fears. And I'll tell you that this sign used to be hung in hotel rooms. And the reason why it was hung in hotel rooms is because someone who got booked into a hotel room with this new technology called electricity didn't know how to use it and saw filament paper hanging in the ceiling and lit it on fire, and part of the hotel burnt down. So hotels started hanging these signs in hotel rooms that were equipped with Edison electric light to give instructions on how to use it, but then also to dispel some fears. So there was obviously fear that it would affect how people slept. This electricity running in the walls behind the bed. It was a concern that that individuals staying at the hotel may not sleep well, and so it was helping people with their fear of the unknown of how this would work. And it's an example of a technology that has become so common in our way of life that we would never think of these types of things. I suspect, and Heidi, you can help me with this, but I suspect that AI is going to be like this. AI will become as fundamental as electricity. Wouldn't you say so, Heidi?
Oh, yeah. Especially with the speed that it's moving, I think the time will quickly come where it will be hard for us to remember what it was like not to have it, even though Like even though it's new to us now, it's hard to think back to a time when I didn't have a cell phone. Like I still remember those times, but the cell phone's so integral to our lives that I think we'll get there with AI too. Like just how would I go through my day without it? Right. And I think that time's coming quickly.
Very quickly, yeah, and we have some stats coming up to talk about kind of the predictions on world and global job numbers and kind of how AI will impact that. But in terms of this slide, I think it's important to remember that disruptive technology sometimes is met with some unease and uncertainty and fear. But also historically, sometimes we get it wrong. And so I love to kind of help people kind of see history. And here's a couple quotes from individuals when other disruptive technologies came into play or on the scene. The first one was a quote in 1899 about the automobile, and I absolutely love that the automobile was referenced as the horseless carriage. But you'll see the ordinary horseless carriage is at present a luxury for the wealthy, and although its price will probably fall in the future, it will never, of course, come into as common use as the bicycle. I think they completely got that one wrong. But also television. The head of 20th Century Fox at the time in 1946 said that television won't be able to hold on to any market it captures after the first 6 months. People will soon get tired of staring at a plywood box every night. How wrong could they be? And of course, the internet had the same fate by the 2008 Nobel Memorial Prize for Economic Sciences, Paul Krugman, who said by 2005 or so, it will become clear that the internet's impact on the economy has been no greater than the fax machines. So not only is disruptive technology often met with fear and uncertainty, but sometimes we get it wrong as a society. We don't see it for what its potential is. We don't think that it'll make that big of an impact. And I suspect that you may have been seeing headlines about AI that there's nothing to see here, that it's not that big of a deal. And when historians write the history of AI in the 21st century, they will probably show headlines just like these that will be equally kind of as comical in how much they missed the mark on the impact of AI. In fact, we're probably already seeing that today. So let's talk a little bit about the World Economic Forum and kind of where this is all going, right? So we talked a little bit about the history and why it's important to really think about how disruptive technology is often seen in society. But what is the prediction here? What are industry leaders thinking? And so we'll talk a little bit about the Future of Jobs report. This is a report put out every year by the World Economic Forum. And I've captured just some of the kind of details that I think are relevant to this conversation. So the report that was produced in January of 2025 highlights a few things around AI. But by 2030, the report says that 170 million new jobs will be created worldwide, but 92 million jobs will be lost. And that's higher than the report recognized in 2023 and 2024 estimations. Close to 40% of workers' core skills are expected to change, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But most importantly, the prediction is that AI will transform 86% of businesses. And you may have already seen this. I give the example. I live in Riverside, California, and I went through a newly remodeled Wiener Schnitzel a few weeks ago, and I was shocked and had a little bit of fun with the AI that was taking my order through the drive-through. It was completely done by artificial intelligence. I tried to challenge it. I made a couple of mistakes on purpose to see if it would catch it, and it took my order very well and was very pleasant. I got the right food at the end, but I did not expect that when I drove through the line that I would be talking with a AI engine that could pass the Turing test. It was very, very human-like. So we're seeing kind of that transformation already in businesses, and you probably have as well. You could think about all of the times you've been online and talked to a chatbot, for instance. Now, some of those are not very good, but they are getting better and better. In terms of the skills that the Future Jobs Report calls out, I think the top skills for the 2025 to 2030, so analytical thinking is certainly going to remain a top core skill. AI and big data, so knowing about AI and big data. But I think more importantly, and when we're thinking about students in K-12, resilience, flexibility, and agility are increasingly important. So the stats are that students today will have 10 to 12 careers in their lifetimes. The only way to do that is to be resilient and flexible in a world that is continually changing. And as this technology becomes more and more fundamental to how we live and work, just like electricity, the need to build out the skill of resilience and flexibility will be just so and so important in the months and years to come for our students. And then finally, creative thinking and motivation top out the top five skills or round out the top five skills. So being able to creatively problem solve, be motivated to come up with unique solutions are key in this new world where the global workforce will change and be impacted by AI. And then finally, I pulled out some education sector insights from this report. We do expect that digital access and AI systems will drive transformation in education. But I think importantly, the recognition that there's a strong focus on lifelong learning. Back to this having multiple careers. The way that happens is by constantly being a lifelong learner, by learning all the time, being curious. And so that's an important piece of how we think about what it means to be a learner today. And how do we develop in students a mindset of curiosity so that they're constantly discovering, constantly engaging their world, and constantly learning. An emphasis towards skill-based assessment is key. And the thought here that 73% of education providers are planning to upskill their workforce because of AI. And also because AI is continuing to be better at doing some of the things that we're used to doing as humans, a growing importance of the human skills alongside digital literacy. So really defining what it means to be the human in the loop is, as we learned from Ethan Mollick and co-intelligence, but really kind of focusing on the humanness of the work that we're doing together. Heidi, did you have some input on that?
Well, I was going to add that, the human becomes more and more important, right? As we're using these, especially these generative AI systems, we need that critical eye of a human to evaluate what's being, spit out by these generative AI models. And then we need that human mind to use that in a way that's productive and effective and ethical, going back to those actual human skills, right? Because it can spit out all kinds of information, but how are we using our critical thinking skills to apply that in a way that's either solving our problem or, advancing technology or, whatever it is we're trying to generate with those large language models. You need that human to be that literal person to apply what they've pulled from those models and apply it in an effective way. And to know the difference between what is correct information, what is not correct information, and to be able to guide the machine in a way that is ethical for humanity.
Mm. Yeah, no, you're so right. I don't know about you, Heidi, but the number of individuals and educators that I follow on LinkedIn and other platforms that are talking about the human-centered approach to all of this, almost a reimagining of human intelligence and rethinking kind of what it means to be a learner in the 21st century because AI is becoming so good, is really forefront on a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, and I think that's something we're wrestling with every day, right? When we talk about that need for lifelong learning, I think that's one of the things, unfortunately, in schools, we prescribe what students learn, and there's a reason for that as well, but students have lost some of that desire to learn on their own, right? Because they already have a set of things they're being told they have to learn. And so that re-engaging that desire to just learn for the sake of learning and learning because it's interesting and interesting to me, I think it's going to be huge with AI, and our education system is going to need to be flexible and open to that, I think, as we move forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, for those that don't know, I spent almost 15 years at Apple before coming to Riverside County Office of Ed. And I will tell you, the most successful people that I ever met at Apple, the most innovative ones were the ones that were the most curious, the ones that really wanted to understand what others were doing outside of their specific expertise, wanted to understand how those kinds of things related to what they knew and what they were doing. And I think they would describe themselves as individuals who were always learning, always growing, always changing. And you're right. Like it's a mindset that we must produce or help grow in students that I don't know that we see very often. in our schools today, but certainly AI, I think will demand that we focus even more on that in the future. So we'll talk a little bit about kind of AI tools. Maybe for those that are watching this, you may have used ChatGPT, but part of what we're seeing in the world of work and just in education in general is just the amount of exposure that ChatGPT has. So this is a quick chart just to kind of get people to realize how unique this moment of our history is. This is a chart that shows how long it took for each of these technologies to get to 100 million users. You'll see on the left side there that it took 75 or close to 75 years for the telephone to get to 100 million users, and the cell phone or the mobile phone went to 16 years. So it got to 100 million users in 16 years. Netflix took 10 years, Twitter took 6 years, Gmail took 5 years, Facebook took 4 years, Instagram took 3 years, TikTok took 9 months, and ChatGPT took 2 months. So November 2023, ChatGPT gets released, and then 2 months later, by January, they had 100 million users using the platform. So one of the things that we're talking with educators a lot about is these kids they know about AI, and many of them are using it. I was in a classroom the other day, and we were using an AI tutoring tool, and one of the students said to me, "Oh, it's just like ChatGPT." And yet it was just another realization that, yeah, these kids already know about these AI tools. And it's not surprising considering how quickly their user base has grown. And ChatGPT is just one of many AI tools out there.
I was going to chime in on that. I can't think of another consumer product that has so drastically affected education and so quickly. Someone else probably watching can think of something, but at least in the ed tech space, like ChatGPT was adopted by the consumer, right? But it was just as quickly just had woven its way into education almost immediately. And like you said at the beginning, disrupted it instantaneously, right? It was just an immediate disruption that kind of felt like it came out of nowhere, but had been in the background for a while. But this availability to everyone, really, I've never seen anything like it, the way that it is kind of upended education and the potential it has to really upend education for the good, I think, as well. So like we said, just as fast as ChatGPT was adopted by the consumer, it's really given us a lot to think about in the education space, and how does education change because these tools and because these models exist. I think we have a video to share on the next screen. We wanted to take a look at this school. Now, this school is in Austin, Texas. If you're watching this and you're an educator, there's some things you might see here that you might not necessarily agree with the model, but we like to show this, and especially we like to discuss it because I think there's a lot to think about here in the ways that we might approach education differently. And we were talking a few minutes ago about cultivating that lifelong learning mindset in students, and this is something that's happening here at this school as well. And so we wanted to show it to provide maybe a discussion point. So if we can go ahead and press play on that, and we'll come back and talk a little bit about it.
There's a high school in Austin, Texas, where AI reigns supreme.
So you've been learning from AI,
Yep.
and now you're building your own AI?
Yes. Textbooks are so last century.
Let us embrace AI and the new way of learning.
And that is the premise of this radical approach to education at Alpha Schools. Here, not only is the teaching of core subjects left entirely to AI,
I'm Elle, your personal dating coach.
even passion projects about young love are infused with artificial intelligence.
I have an app,
Okay.
answers any question about teen dating. I want to ask my crush out to prom in front of all of her friends. Is that a good idea?
It really depends on her personality.
So you've created a data set using like ChatGPT and your own TikTok?
And my TikTok. Combining the two to create this app.
The AI programs they use to teach core curriculum are so personalized they even police procrastination.
It'll track my screen and it'll say, oh, hey, she's not focused on her lessons right now.
So the app is a textbook, a teacher, a quiz, and like kind of like a video game.
Exactly.
At As for supervision, adults in the classroom are called guides, not teachers, and are supposed to focus only on motivating students, and previous teaching experience is not required.
Maybe I'm wondering how to reach out to manufacturers, things that kids maybe aren't able to perfectly do. We still have an adult that's there to mentor us and to guide us.
Are you comfortable having guides in the classroom that don't necessarily know the core curriculum that may be on the screens in front of those kids?
We have the ability in this day and age to get whatever information or knowledge right at our fingertips. It's okay that our guides aren't experts in physics or math. They are experts in their students.
That AI core curriculum is done for just 2 hours a day, and after a morning of machine learning, students work on life skills, in-person collaboration, and real-world projects.
I'm building an AI-based health coach that uses your genetics to create personalized fitness and nutrition plans.
I'm making my first short film. That way I can make my own film studio.
I'm creating an AR board game, so when you put your phone over it, it'll pop up on your phone.
And you're able to build that here?
Yeah.
Are you at all worried that when you go off to college, I mean, you have a lot of apps here that are helping you learn, but when you don't have those apps, that you're going to be able to translate the knowledge that you have here?
There's no content you can put in front of us that we can't go figure out without a teacher, which is what college is all about.
And while schools of all levels are grappling with how AI fits into the classroom, a recent Harvard study found that students using AI tutors for an Ivy League level physics course tested better than those in traditional classes. Now Harvard is expanding that pilot program to test machine learning on a bigger scale. And that is welcome news for Alpha founder Mackenzie Price.
I believe that in 10 years, every student will have the ability to learn everything they need to know via an iPad. We believe children are limitless, and it's the guide's job and our job as schools to help unlock that potential.
All right, a lot to unpack there. We could probably do a whole nother presentation on just that video. One of the things we talk about with educators is, even if you don't agree with everything that's in that video clip or what they're doing at Alpha School, there's a lot of implications for education overall. And how do we blend what we've been doing and what we've been doing well with some of the potential maybe strategies or potential ways we can learn with AI in schools? How do we move forward and recognize that information is at everyone's fingertips, right? We don't need one person standing at the front of the classroom delivering information to the students. So what does it look like, and what should it look like?
Yeah, I think partly this video is meant to kind of make us a little uneasy in our seats and to provide opportunities for reflection, right? We want to kind of give a picture of something that's happening. This is as real world as it gets. They've opened up multiple schools, not just in Texas, but other states as well. But really, the technology is getting so good that they are challenging some of the most basic assumptions about what education might look like. And so, yeah, I think, Heidi, you're right. How do we take this new technology that's clearly disruptive, and how do we allow it to impact kind of the areas of education that we know need to be most impacted? And certainly, I think our next video kind of shows that in real time with Sal Khan and his son. I think that's the next one.
So I'll set this one up. This is Sal Khan from Khan Academy. He's using a tool from OpenAI or ChatGPT. And I guess we'll go ahead and play it and you can kind of see what it does. But this is available now. This is not a futuristic tool. You can open this up today and experiment with this tool.
Hi, my name is Sal Khan. I'm the founder of Khan Academy. And I'm also the author of a new book about artificial intelligence in education called Brave New Words. And OpenAI invited myself and my son Imran here to try out some of their new technology. And so we're curious about how good it might be at tutoring someone in math on Khan Academy. So let's get it started. It's loading up. Hello there. I'm here with my son, and I'd love you to tutor him on this math problem. But don't give him the answer. You can ask questions and nudge him in the right direction, but I really want to make sure he understands it himself. And he's here in the room, so you can talk to him directly.
Of course, I'd be happy to help. Let's look at the problem together. Can you first identify which sides of the triangle are the opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse relative to angle alpha?
All right, so I'm pretty sure this is the angle alpha right here, right?
Perfect. That's correct. Now, looking at the triangle, which side do you think is the hypotenuse? Remember the hypotenuse?
I'm not totally sure. I think it might be this one, but I really am not sure. This side AC.
You're close. Actually, side AC is called the adjacent side to the angle alpha. The hypotenuse is the longest side of a right triangle and is directly opposite the right angle. Can you find which one is the hypotenuse?
Oh, okay, I see. So, I think the hypotenuse is this really long side from A to B. Would that be correct?
Exactly. Well done. Now that you've identified the hypotenuse, can you identify which side is the opposite side to angle alpha?
Okay, well, I mean, you told me earlier that this was the adjacent side, and I know that's the hypotenuse, so I'm guessing that this side, BC, is the opposite side.
Great deduction. That's absolutely correct. Now that you've identified all the sides relative to angle alpha, do you remember the formula for finding the sine of an angle in a right triangle?
Yeah, I know that the sine is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse.
Perfect. That's absolutely right. Now, can you apply that formula to find side alpha in the triangle using the lengths of the sides that we've identified?
Okay, so, I mean, you told me that 7, this side BC, is the opposite side. And then you said that the hypotenuse is the longest side, so that would be this side AB, which is 25. So would the answer be 7 over 25?
Excellent work.
There's just so many implications, right? Yeah, about how this could impact the way that we access and learn information, the way that we grow.
Well, just like the ability to self-direct one's learning and to have someone there, as you start to feel frustrated where you might generally give up, you have someone there with you every step of the way, and I know some people probably see that, right? Again, and that fear comes in of, well, like, what is my place in education if this tool can walk students through the process of things, right? And so, but I think the flip side is all the students that maybe have been left behind, or, teachers have so many things on their plate and so many students to serve. And if we have a tool that can come alongside and support educators in helping students get the help they need at the pace they need it, at the level they need it, I think it's a real game changer for all of our students and frees up educators to provide a little more one-on-one time and that human piece to students while the machine takes care of some of that procedural instruction.
Totally agree, Heidi. And I think I'm conscious of our time here. I think that's pretty close to the end of our slide. Do we want to move into some Q&A now?
Yeah, I think this is a perfect time. Thank you so much for sharing the presentation. It's very insightful. It's so interesting to see how AI is being used to not only enhance learning, but to truly transform how students engage with the content and express their creativity. So let's see, you mentioned that AI as a tool to shift students from passive consumers to active creators. What are some of the most exciting examples you've seen of this transformation happening in real classrooms?
I think we're just starting to scratch the surface of seeing this being used in the classroom. One of the ways we see it the most right now is as that tutor, right? As a tutoring space, the students interact with tools to kind of get the one-on-one help that they need. I think we're just starting to get into the place where schools and educators are starting to understand the power of how AI can individualize learning and where we can go from there. And so right now, mainly seeing it in the tutoring space, but I know Jeff's been working with some schools here in Riverside County and is starting to see that expand a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think we did a book study at RCOE with staff by Ethan Mollick. I referenced it, called Co-Intelligence, and he has kind of these 4 pillars, and one of the pillars is always keep AI at the table. And so I think that's kind of the first thing we've been working on is how do we allow AI to be kind of part of the conversation, both from a student lens and a faculty lens. And in terms of creativity, part of the creative piece of this is knowing when to use AI and how to get help. And so we deployed the tool by Khan Academy called Conmigo to some of our alternative ed community day school sites in Riverside County. And I was in a classroom a couple of weeks ago where they were working with Conmigo, is an AI tutor, to help them with their PBL project. So they were building roller coasters out of paper and marbles and trying to make them as tall and as wide and as incredible as possible. And then they also had to do a presentation in front of their peers and write their script. So they were leveraging an AI tutor in multiple ways. And actually, they were being creative on how they leveraged the tutor to get help for things that they may not have had an opportunity to do in the past. So that's one way that I'm seeing it. And of course, there are ways in which we're seeing it, and vendors utilizing AI to help with teacher tools and training and all of that. But in terms of student use, that's probably the best way I've seen it so far being utilized.
That's really interesting. I'm curious what advice you would give to educators who are just beginning to explore this expansive world of AI and all these tools, because I'm sure it can feel, overwhelming at times and they're unsure of where to start. So what would you say to them?
I would agree with that. Even for us, there's a new tool every single day. So I would say, start small, pick a tool or two. Maybe you have colleagues that can recommend a tool or two and explore those. Be sure that there's something that is approved for student use and approved by your district. So if you were to go search for AI tools, there's a ton. And as an educator, if you just take one of those tools without knowing what's happening on the back end of that tool, that can affect our student privacy. So you want to be mindful of what, if anything, is approved in your district for use and start there. I would start with, like we've mentioned, ChatGPT for, as an educator use and not necessarily for student use, but learn how to prompt, learn how to interact with that tool, and don't try to learn or adopt every single tool out there because there's too many and a lot of them are redundant. So if you find a couple that are approved by your district and work for you, I would start there.
Yeah, and I'd probably just add that. So I'm coming from a different perspective, right? I'm coming out of industry, and I often think about how ed tech has typically been adopted in education, and I think there's often a connection to efficiency, right? And so when we have new ed tech tools that get adopted in education, it's usually, or the majority of the time, it's teacher focused, and it's the fundamental question is, how do I do what I've done before but better or faster? So it's an efficiency play, right? And that's a good question to ask. But for my advice on AI, I think I would say to educators, ask a different question. If they can start with, what will this tool allow me to do with my students that I've never been able to do before? That's fundamentally a better question to ask of AI. It is going to help you do things quicker. It's going to make your lesson planning faster. It will make you more efficient. It's going to impact us in ways that we can't imagine in terms of that piece. But I think where the transformation happens, or where the innovation can happen, is when we start to really wrestle with, what will this allow me to do with learners, young learners, and all of my learners, and what will allow me to do with them that I've never been able to do before. And as they continue to ask that question and wrestle with that question, they'll find really amazing ways to use AI that's unique and innovative.
Looking ahead, what shifts do you hope to see in how schools and districts integrate AI into teaching and learning over the next 3 to 5 years?
I mean, I think for me, the big one would be that the discussion around cheating is no longer there. That's in my role and in working with schools and working with educators. That's kind of the number one thing that came up initially and really continues to come up, that that's the concern, right? Is students are going to use this to do their work for them. But back to Jeff's point, if we're asking a different question, what we're asking students to do needs to change, right? We can't keep asking them to write an essay to prove what they know, because they're going to continue to generate that essay with the tools that are available to them. So it's about, asking different questions and changing what we're asking students to do to learn and to prove what they know and to apply what they know. And I hope that discussion around, well, AI is just for cheating, I hope that that's gone and that we see it as the co-intelligence that it is, and as a really powerful tool to help students learn, and not as just this, fly by night technology that's come along and now is cheating always existed, right? And so the tool is not the issue. It's is there value in what we're asking students to do? Is it relevant? Are we asking them to do things that they feel like matter in their lives? And I hope that AI comes in and forces more of these discussions and really forces education to really evaluate what we've been asking students to do for so long, and cheating with the tool is no longer the main concern.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, Heidi. I think, yeah, I hope in 3 to 5 years we're beyond that. I also, I guess, back to my kind of electricity analogy, I hope it's, I would dare to say that there aren't any teachers currently who would consider teaching a lesson or having a class without turning the lights on before they walked into their room. Like, we are just using electricity. And that is something that has to happen for learning to take place. And I guess in 3 to 5 years, I really hope I can say the same thing about AI, that it is fundamental, and I mean that term in every sense of the word, to how we work, to how we learn, to how we process information, to how we think about the world, and that it becomes the new electricity. So we're to a place in 3 to 5 years that it's like you just come to class and it's just part of what it means to be a learner. It's just part of your world. Back to kind of Ethan Mollick's pillars, one of the things he says is to assume that it's the worst it will ever be, right? At any moment in time, when you're using AI, it's the worst it will ever be. So 3 to 5 years from now is incredible. I just read a quote from Bill Gates last week where he's predicting that within 10 years, a large majority of the workforce will be down to a 2-day work week. Because of the capabilities of artificial intelligence and the coming of artificial general intelligence and those things. So we cannot be in the same spot in education in 3 to 5 years if Bill Gates is right about this. We've got to shift. We've got to rethink. We've got to think differently. And we have. I hope we're not afraid to take some chances and some risks, because we know what students will need, and we want to help them be the most successful version of themselves in this world that is drastically going to be different because of AI.
That was very well said and very eye-opening. I'm curious to see what the future looks like. Everything's always changing, and it's changing so fast. So very interesting topic today. I'd like to thank you guys again for sharing your insights and helping us better understand the role of AI in shaping the future of education. As we've heard today, as you guys discussed, transforming education with AI isn't just about the tools, it's about opening up new possibilities for teaching, learning, and student success. So that wraps up today's episode of Achieving the Vision. Thank you guys again for being our guests, and thank you at home for tuning in. We hope to see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks, Alyssa.